Chris, how are you?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to some good conversation this morning.
You're known as the mad scientist of strength. What does that mean?
Um, it means, well, I'm assuming what it means is I bring like these kind of crazy ideas to the world. And, at first blush, people are like, where is that coming from? But then all of a sudden start testing, using the concepts, and people are start connecting the dots of how kind of these diverse thought processes and tools really change the experience for uh, essentially the biomechanics, the improvement of methodology, this alignment of all things to allow us to be able to cultivate a level of physical resilience in a manner that is going to reduce our ability to get injured, live a better quality of life. But it's kind of my background. I'm a very kind of crazy, dynamic person, uh, big mix of ADHD, life experiences, all sort of stuff. Uh, but I put things to use. I mix this clinical practice with like lifting heavy things. And to a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. So, and, I do have awards for scientific innovation, patents, and, things like that. I used to run some aerospace companies and automotive manufacturing. And it's a weird deal to be in the strength training world, but I'm assuming that's where the name got kicked off from and why people really just connect with it.
You're arguably one of the strongest pound for pound humans in the world, and you go far beyond the physical domain of strength. So that's the part I want to understand, how you've used your life as a working laboratory and to get into the other domains of how you think about strength, the multi-dimensional pieces to it. And to do that, I want to understand some of your formative years, because in your book, you've been challenged. You had some real challenge. And so where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I'll start. I'll show my book. It's a bestseller, The Eagle and the Dragon, which is people would go, "Oh, it must be a lifting book," but it's a bestseller in psychology, self-improvement, things of those nature. I think there was like 5 categories, but it's titled "The Eagle and the Dragon," and you probably can't tell for the people viewing this, but the front cover is. I'm shirtless, and you can see that there's 2 massive tattoos on my body, and they really represent the 2 phases or the two books in one that it is. So the first one is the eagle, and I've got this giant eagle that's tattooed. It's across my stomach, my obliques, like this whole midsection, and there was a large eagle on my back as well. And I had these done at 20 years old, and there's a chain around the ankle of each one of those. And if you follow that chain, it wraps all the way down my body to my ankle. And to me, it was a representation, and it'll make more sense when I dive into the life story piece of it. But it was a representation to me that you can climb to whatever heights, you can fly to whatever heights that you want in the world. The only thing truly holding you back at the end of the day is yourself. Yeah, we see like motivational quotes and things like that that may represent something similar, but it was truly a deep thing for me around being able to find your strengths, discover your value, and how you contribute to the world. And then the second one is this giant dragon. It's actually an Ouroboros. So a Western mythology, though, although I do love the mix of Eastern and Western dragon. So actually on my back, it's covered. The part of it, the integration is the koi fish, which represents the Eastern dragon, is part of it on my back. But on my chest, you see this giant dragon head, and the body wraps all the way around my shoulders and arms and my upper body. I think there's about 80 hours total into that one piece. And there was like 40 in the eagles. And the Ouroboros for me, a lot of times it represents, infinity, the continual renewal of life. But for me, it was this thinking down that line, this thought process of purposeful reinvention. So no longer the just discovery piece, but the deciding specifically who you are, what you want to be in this world, based on what you value, and becoming that person, this purposeful reinvention and that continual nature of that process. And so the first one I done, around 19 or 20. The second one I actually did the first 40 hours. The Ouroboros was done over the course of 1 week in 8 to 9 hour sessions every single day. I think I was around 38 when I had that one done, and both represent some pretty distinct life changes or shifts that are covered in the scope of the book. And yeah, it's an interesting, people read it and they're like, that's unbelievable. Like what you've been through, should be a movie, which actually there is a movie coming, but.
Okay. All right. So I wasn't going to ask this question necessarily, but when it comes, I don't have any tattoos, and I feel like I can't quite fully commit to something like, that is permanent. And there's, I do not have commitment issues, but I don't know. It's like, I don't get my head around it. And so, and I know that lots of people do, but can we start with like commitment for you and what that means? And then I want to peel into early life experiences, but like, let's start with commitment, because obviously those tattoos mean something deep to you. And then you committed to inking your skin permanently with those ideologies.
Yeah. And you won't typically find somebody that has any sort of representation like I do, because it's like somebody covered with tattoos, they're going to have 100 tattoos, right? Or if they've got 2 tattoos, it's not that much, where that's literally, I have 2 tattoos that encompass more work than most people get done in their life. But I've only chosen to do that for a couple particular times. And so I operate myself in a very visual medium. So, my background's engineering, but I have to I'm not great at, sitting down at a computer and designing. I've got to go create these things that are bigger than life that represent that. And that is, it's that bigger than life thing. But to me it's expressing it, not just to myself, but the world around me, but not like shouting it at the top of the lungs, or even really distinctly telling people what it is. Like, I'm not running around telling people what my personal goals and objectives are. I think actually some of that stuff you should keep very close to your chest, but I still represent those things out there. And I'm a really big believer in walking the walk. So I'm called the mad scientist because it's a mixture of science, but actually the learning by the doing. And I don't know that I'm addressing the specific question on commitment, but my life is all about that. It is about seeing things that are so far out there, so big, that people would think they're astronomically impossible, but creating that alignment in your life where you know exactly what you want to be and where you're going, and just being able to put one foot forward every day. And we see so many people that just don't move that direction. They don't understand like their personal value system and how to express that in the world, or get caught up in the chaos of like the stress, the life, all these sorts of things, and start running around with our hair on fire with, checklists, knocking stuff. I'm getting stuff done. I feel good. I'm accomplishing stuff. And 10 years passes and you've accomplished a million things, but they're literally nothing that has moved you forward to being closer to that way that you want to be. So it's not like hardcore commitment. It's just making sure that you're always just moving that needle a little bit forward, and knowing that you may not be able to see those results in a year, 5 years, 10 years, but you can look back and go, oh, that kid that was living in a tree fort, chasing down rattlesnakes at 6 years old and washing himself, with a jug from a stream sitting out on a rock. he's he's running a company. He's sought after to do turnarounds. That in my 20s, I took custody of my three younger siblings, and I raised all of them while I was working on my engineering degrees, my MBA, while I was also chasing my career.
Chris, this is where I want to go with you. This is exactly where I want to go. And you're slipping it in like in a cool way. But when I read your story, it's like, wow. And most people look at you. You're a massive human, and they go, he was always going to be strong. He was probably born with, the preconditions to, some sort of genetic coding, predisposition, I should say, to be strong, to be maybe one of the strongest Guinness World Record holding strength. I don't know if that's true or not, but when I read your story, let's just go through the sequence. So start us where you're going to start us, but I want to go through those big boulders and those big experiences you've had in your formative years.
Yeah. So my parents, my mother particularly, had some, whatever they were in her life. I kind of talk about them a bit in the book, but some drivers for her to really want to try to form a life outside of what we call the norms of society. So she was going to school to be a chemical engineer, raising me. And at this point, she's like, this just is not, I don't deal well with authority. I don't actually interact well with society. And so she moved at the time, myself, and then came my brother, and then my three sisters into the mountains in Northern California. And so this is, it started out living in a kind of a commune style home up in the woods. We're outside. It's like there's no roads in, no electricity. The waters, finding this spring and getting it tapped. And we had she dug a fire pit in the side of the mountain so she could make an oven, and that was the start of it.
How old were you?
My memories at this time, I don't know exactly when that started, but my memories start around 5 years old in that arena. And actually, I've gone back and revisited some of those spaces in the last couple of years. And then we ended up in kind of the more remote areas. So we moved into this place in Northern California off of Humboldt County that was about 50 miles deeper than where this documentary Murder Mountain takes place. So when you're reading my book, and if you're having questions like, really, you're dealing with corrupt police and murderers and serial killers and human trafficking, like that's just like, watch the documentary and you realize just the true reality of the situation that we lived in. So like, all right, I'm 6 years old, and we've got trees strapped up or beams strapped up into the trees. And I'm being taught by my stepfather how to capture and handle live rattlesnakes, because there's rattlesnake dens all around, and I'm, out playing. This is not, I have to learn this stuff for my own safety, or maybe there's some other things beyond that. I don't know. And that was, it's time, it seems normal, later years reflecting back, it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty crazy. There's, a murderer living a few, a mile away. We find out later, my parents actually turned him in, but it was an interesting process. And then I think, there was just, it got very dicey, because a lot of people want to romanticize this like life of living outside of the norm, and not realizing that maybe the other people that are out there are not there for altruistic reasons. Maybe they're hiding from something, right? And I bring that up because, at the time, my parents were in the drug trade. That's why we were where we were. They were trying to figure out how to get that going, but that's like any business. It is something that's just not immediate. You've got to build a crop and all these other things, and they never quite were successful before getting arrested. So my entire upbringing, this family that size was living on less than $5,000 a year. Like we had nothing. I remember there was a winter watching my parents just like shrivel into nothing. We're eating, bags. We had a 50-pound bag of rice and a 50-pound bag of beans. And then one day I'm like, Mom, what are these? Why does this rice have a little black head on it? Well, they got infested with weevils and we had to throw it out. And that was the environment. I mean, half the time, by the time I graduated high school, half the time had been either homeless or, living in homes with no running water, no electricity, or either. And so in California, we ended up getting taken by the police and then put into child protective services for a year before our parents got us back.
At what age
And that
was
it was third grade for me, third or fourth grade. The memories sometimes are a little difficult. I seem to be missing fourth grade somewhere, which happens when you have trauma.
Okay, I want to take a quick little break right here to talk about Keon. You've probably heard that the human body is mostly water, but what you likely don't know is that the next largest component after water are amino acids, which make up about 50% of your solid body mass. So these building blocks are essential for health and wellness and fitness. No matter how you like to move, wherever and however you stay fit, amino acids are essential. And that's why Keon Aminos are one of my go-to supplements for fitness and health as well. Keon Aminos is backed by over 20 years of clinical research. They have the highest quality ingredients. There's no filters, no junk. They undergo rigorous quality testing. They got the taste right. They've got this thing working. It also gives you a natural boost in energy. There's an athletic recovery mechanism, as I mentioned earlier. So I just want to encourage you to check out Keon Aminos and give them a shot. So right now, as a Finding Mastery listener, you can save 20% off monthly deliveries and 10% on a one-time purchase. So punch over to getkeon.com/finding mastery. So you spell that get, G-E-T, Keon, K-I-O-N, getkeon.com/finding mastery to get one of my fundamental supplements for fitness, for health. It's Keon Aminos. And Finding Mastery is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I love Athletic Greens. If you've been part of this community, you know that. If you're new here, I just want to encourage you to go check out what they're doing. And so I've been using Athletic Greens for just about 8 years now, and I'm stoked on it. I love the energy levels that I have on a daily basis, and Athletic Greens is part of that equation. It's just one scoop is all I use of Athletic Greens. And inside that, there's 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens, all to help, get the day started right. I use it in the morning. So their special blend of ingredients are designed to support gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus. They're thinking about aging in some of their vitamins and minerals that they've put together as well. So right now, I think it's a great time to invest in your immune system for obvious reasons. And so there's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look after your health. Athletic Greens is making it super simple. It's one scoop and then free 1-year supply that they're offering us for vitamin D. And they're also throwing in 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. So just punch over to athleticgreens.com/finding mastery. Again, it's athleticgreens.com/finding mastery. And with that, let's jump right back into our conversation. Can you talk about what the trauma was?
There's some things I cover in the book or touch note on, but it's rather difficult to get into in conversation. But human trafficking did directly affect the family as well. And so the first time I saved my mom from the serial killer that tracked her later in life when he got out of prison was 1985. There's just not necessarily specific things, but, when you look at the, 8 major things that cause trauma, or 9, I've had at least 8 of them. And I don't want to explore, hypnotization to find out on the other because it affected every other one of my siblings.
Okay.
And so
what is this like to talk about?
It is, for me, it ties, what is it like? It can be very emotional, and but it is something that, as I've shared my story through the years and the messages that I have as they relate to that, like the impact that it has on others, is beyond that's why I sat down to write the book. The pieces that I put out and dropped, I've my book has been just incredibly useful for people at all levels, but all the way down to people contemplating taking their own life. And this isn't a one-off thing. It has been over and over and over again. To the business person, somebody that's taken on, either going back to school or started their own business, or because to me, it's all about this stuff is, to me, it's a story. It is, and it's a great story to articulate the message how I'm not downplaying any trauma or things that have happened to people, but at the same time, understanding these are things that you don't have control of, and they're not what define you. You're defined by your actions and responses to those things. And even if it's been significantly horrible, there's no reason why let it be that. Why let that be the defining thing? And that you can still use and leverage what you can from that to become more resilient, to withstand maybe the things that you don't anticipate that are coming next. So like in the physical performance realm, we call it the specific adaptation to imposed demand, right? And we know that if we have a demand, the body's going to come back and be more. I had this heavy workout, mentally and physically going in, mentally going into it. Oh, I don't know if I can handle it. You get done. You're like, you know what? I can do that. I can do that next time, and maybe a little bit more, right? And over time, you start building to that. Now, at the beginning, like this base level stuff that I'm talking about here in my early experiences as life, everybody has a different level of resilience to start with. Everybody's going to walk into the gym at a different rate, right? But everybody has the ability to layer that over time. And the interesting thing to note is, just like going into the gym, though, you can get soft if you don't have those things in your life. And if you don't have those, and you take it, you're living life on the beach, enjoying Mai Tais with no stress or whatever, something 10, 20 years down the line, doesn't matter whether you're a war hero or things that you were in the past. If you don't have some level of being able to step into an uncomfortable zone, to be able to live in this area where you've got this, little bit of anxiety, fear, but also excitement kind of in your life on things. And it doesn't have to be things that are going to be traumatic, but if you don't stay in the practice of that, you may have something that overwhelms you.
Okay, hold on. Stay here for a minute, because that's a really important point that you're making, like significantly important. And it's oversaid, you get comfortable being uncomfortable.
It is oversaid, but people don't really understand that in the physiology around it. Like, I can't remember which author I was reading at the time. They were talking about the biodomes experiments, and the trees growing to a certain height, they're just fallen over. It took them a long time to figure out why, and it was because they didn't have the wind buffeting against them, the physical environment beating against them, telling those roots to go strong and deep, right? And you start taking a step back. Well, the SAID principle, everything that it relates to it, like, overcoming challenge is literally the essence of life. That is that singular tree kind of like poking up out of this outcropping on a rock where there shouldn't be something, right? It's working against that environment to create life. This is the essence of life, and we can let it slip away from us because we're always chasing comfort. We're chasing in business, like, I can't wait till I can get to that level where everything calms down. And then go read any great business book. Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, for example. And it's like, they were so stressful, barely make it on for all these times, but everything you can tell him, his entire team, they would always, those were the glory days. Those were the days that brought excitement, engagement, and life in all aspects of your life, right? And so it's not about burning the candle at both ends, because you still have to have the opportunity for recovery. It's not pushing yourself, just like I said, till you're like in the gym, puking and can't move and breaking yourself down. You can do that with stress. And so this is why I relate a lot of this stuff to the training aspect of it, because these messages get mixed, like this hustle and grind mentality with life. Like, I absolutely believe we need to find these opportunities to turn into, but it may be that turning into it may be a difficult conversation with your partner. taking on a challenging project at work, raising your hand when it's like, man, I hope Joe over there or Susan over there gets it, and being instead of going, you know what, I don't know if I can handle that one. I think I'm going to take that on. Right. And I can't promise you every one of those is going to turn out great. But the mentality of doing that is going to lead to, because, you know, where I'm at in life, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I could do if I just had all the motivation and drive and looked at some motivational posters and got all amped up. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't be able to pull it off because I wouldn't have the stamina, the resilience, the commitment to stick to it over time, knowing that even when I fail, or that it's just the first step in, I discovered that's not it right now. I'm going to come around with a different approach, different way, give it more time, learn some more, that I have the confidence and know that I can get that done. And that's the long haul.
Yeah, let me pause here for a minute, because the way I'm hearing this part of it is you're saying, listen, this is a significant first principle, which is to hold the tension. And I love that phrase, hold the tension in the uncomfortable, difficult space. And certainly we understand that athletically and physically, right? Like one more rep and do it cleanly. You can probably do one more, do that cleanly. You know, like we get it from the physical standpoint, but what you're talking about is the internal uncomfortableness, the psychological uncomfortableness, which is really a physiological sensation. We feel anxiety.
I call it the gut check.
Yeah.
When you feel that kind of twisting up, and it's a mixture of, and you can think about some things in life when biological drivers push us there. So like getting to be an adolescent and that wanting to get out on your own, and, you know, but the comfort of the home on the other side, and it pushes you there. The same thing with like finding a partner, you know, moving that next level with the relationship, having a child. But then once those disappear, how many people just coast, and then they're sitting there on their deathbed going, wait, what? Where did life go?
Okay, so two parts to this. How do you practice and structure your day to get psychologically and emotionally uncomfortable? And then how do you work with yourself when you're in that state?
So I don't do anything consciously with like the structure of my day per se, but it's more of being the awareness in my life when I feel like I'm coasting, that I'm getting into the groove. Everything's clicking, and I need to have those times. You got to have that stuff that fills you back up. Like I said, you got to have your recovery. But if you go on vacation, just like I said, a nice weekend off from training, good thing. A nice 3 months on vacation, you're not doing anything, you're going to get weak, right? And so I don't have anything on the structure of that, but how do I deal with it when I'm in it? Because when you're in it, it is hard. It's overwhelming sometimes when everything in life, and I'm in one of those right now. There's a lot of stuff going on from a business and family perspective, and it's a 3-step process for me. So those steps involve just acknowledging the fact that I am here. I'm in one of those moments. I'm overwhelmed. Stress is piling on me. I'm going to be responding in a certain manner. That's step 1, is just being honest with yourself that, okay, I'm here. The second step is to celebrate that fact, to take a step back and go, this is my glory moment. This is the time when I come over this. Next month, next year is going to be the thing I brag about, maybe to a family member, may just be to myself, to know I freaking did it. I overcame that. I got there, right? And then the last thing is the adaptation. So now use that, push through that, but use that now as your lever for that next thing that's going to come at you. Maybe it's self-imposed. Maybe it's something that came out of left field that you didn't anticipate. And that's what it's all preparation for, right? And so you're going to be able to lever off of that. And part of that leveraging is just the recognizing that when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, it's because you care about whatever's happening. And so it means that you're going to use that to be able to perform at a higher level. This is an important thing to me. So that's good. That's good to know. And I'm going to use that because I'm going to perform better than I normally do.
Let's go back. Let's go back. Okay. So third grade, fourth grade, you lose a little bit. Deep trauma. When do you imagine trauma, the trauma phase that we're referring to? When do you imagine that ended?
Well, it just kind of it shifted a little bit, maybe alleviated, but around high school. So when the parents got us back in Oregon, got out of the drug trade, don't want to have the chance of losing the kids again, but very quickly fell back into patterns of living in the woods. At the time now it was prospecting, mining, things of that nature. And so we ended out in the Eastern Oregon doing that. In high school, they ended up, my stepfather won a disability suit and was able to put a down payment on this mobile home. And so we did that. And I had a stable place to live for maybe it was 3 or 4 years. And I didn't have doors, we had to hang up sheets. The windows, we had to put plastic over because they're little crank ones. But I did have electricity, had running water, didn't have a kitchen. So we threw up some 2x4s to hold the sink. And that was it for high school for me. So I was kind of working part-time, helping with the family,
Did your
to
friends
school.
know?
A couple close friends had knew. And for me, it was really about this self-esteem and the feeling that everybody knew that I was the kid that was, like when I started high school, we had a 16-foot trailer and we were living down by the river. The old Chris Farley joke, in a trailer down by the river. That was us. And I remember I'd have to get off the bus, but the bus ended well before, getting to the road to the woods. And I'd sit there and wait. And sometimes my parents would get drunk and forget to pick me up. And then I'd have to walk for miles. And the bus driver finally found out what was going on. And he'd just added to his trip and drove me out there. But for me, it was this, I always had dirty clothes, very changing schools all the time. And so I wasn't necessarily wasn't very socialized, and a bit of an outcast for that matter, especially again with, maybe smelled a little dirty, my clothes completely out of style. It wasn't like, us seeing poor today, where you may still have nice clothes and, a smartphone and things like that. We had nothing. And that affected my self-confidence, my self-esteem at that period of time. So it was a very dark time, I think, for me.
How did you manage that? You didn't use drugs.
I started lifting weights.
Mm-hmm. So you poured into that.
Yep. So
you were the kid
I was already the nerd, right? And that wasn't helping me. I was just, the smartest kid in the class. And I'm like, I'm just going to dive into this. So I started with just doing jump squats and push-ups and things like that around, I think it was 11 years old, 12 years old. And
did you get made
fun
I got
of? It. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for smelling, for clothes.
Yep.
And then how did you, when that would happen, what did you do?
I didn't do anything.
Okay.
I just buried my head and sat there or walked away. Right.
Was it a numb response, or was there a big emotional response and you didn't have the way to?
It was a numb response. I mean, that was my life. There wasn't anything I could do about it. I didn't really take it. I mean, it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't like, oh my God, or I went home, feeling like it was just the general, I guess, mode of my life for the most part. And then when I started getting involved in sports and building kind of my self-esteem, realizing I could have control over that aspect. And then it got to the point of well, hey, nobody's making fun of me anymore because I'm the strongest guy in the school. So that was, yeah, I mean, clearly let's look at what I accomplished in my life post that. It's pretty easy to see that I chose the things that go, hey, everything, and again, my personal things going on, like in my head, that, people look down upon me, for whatever it is, like, I'm going to outperform you. I'm going to outperform you physically. I'm going to outperform you mentally. I'm going to outperform you in business. You put anything out there and I'm going to be the best.
Where did that, wait, Chris, this is material important. Where did that come from?
I don't think I realized that till I was like in my 30s, probably, that I was like, oh, this is probably why I am such an overachiever in so many areas. I don't remember ever consciously making that choice. I just wanted to be the best. And like I said, I was lacking the self-confidence, like on the social side, but I had so many like physical experiences of overcoming my environment, from, digging a trench to hanging tarps to like all this like stuff to like live, that I knew that I was capable of like overcoming stuff. And that was early on. I had a tremendous amount of confidence in my ability to overcome things, that I could truly get there. Now, sometimes I'd step in, like, I was my senior year of high school, I'm valedictorian, I'm a state level athlete, and I didn't know how to manage like this process of going to, getting prepared for college, filling out the FAFSA forms and scholarships and all this sort of stuff. I didn't have any guidance from my parents. And I was, thinking about it, I just didn't realize this till very recently. I was like, oh yeah, there was a point in time I was just considering renting an apartment and continuing to wait tables at the resort that I was working at. Right. And it's like, fuck, that's kind of crazy that I was thinking about doing that. But I was, trying to chase that stuff down. And I ended up I applied for a scholarship with a newspaper, and they turned me down, but they said, this is really interesting. And so they did a front page article on me, and that got picked up by the wire service. I ended up doing interviews on the radio, and one of the colleges, a technical college, came through and called me up and said, hey, why don't you come down and visit us? And I didn't have a ride down there, so my calculus teacher drove me down to the college. And that's where I ended up getting a full ride scholarship, academic scholarship, with a mixture of grants and scholarships to go to school. And that's when I discovered that a lot of my personal views of myself were not really reality, because it was a fresh start. It was people that didn't know me. And I started opening up and discovering, wow, okay, I can actually engage with people really well. The life of the party, like just this experience, girls like me, like it was interesting environment for me for a couple of years.
Okay, I want to take a quick little break here to talk about bio-optimizers. As a Finding Mastery listeners, I know you understand the importance of a good night rest. And sleep is not only essential for recovery, but it can affect your mood, your hormones, weight gain, weight loss, and so many other factors that may be impacting your health. So if you're struggling with sleep in any way, I want to encourage you to check out what bio-optimizers are doing. This could be an unlock for you. It's been a game changer for me. All it takes is a glass of water and magnesium breakthrough. That's the name of their product. And I take it 30 minutes before I hit the pillow. They have 7 essential forms of magnesium included in this full spectrum serving, designed to help you relax, to unwind. So just recently, the company released their 4th upgraded formulation. I love what they're doing. I want to encourage you to check them out. So for a limited time, bio-optimizers, the makers of Magnesium Breakthrough, they're offering an additional bonus gift for the next 1,000 customers while supplies last. With your purchase, they're including free bottles of their full line of digestive health. So there's some probiotics in there. They've got a product to help alleviate heartburn and acid reflux. I want to encourage you to check out what they're doing. To activate this exclusive limited time offer, visit magbreakthrough.com/finding mastery and then enter the code finding mastery at checkout. Again, that's MAG breakthrough, magbreakthrough.com/finding mastery, and then use that code finding mastery at checkout. And with that, let's jump right back into our conversation. And Finding Mastery is also brought to you by Inside Tracker. Inside Tracker, they cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, DNA, lifestyle, fitness trackers, all designed to provide you with a personalized, science-backed, trackable action plan on how you can live and age and perform better in life. And that's my favorite part. They don't just give you data and then say, okay, figure it out. Good luck. Here's some general recommendations. They actually provide you with nutrition and lifestyle actionable steps that you can take to live well. So if you missed our Finding Mastery conversation with Inside Tracker's founder and chief science officer, Dr. Gil Blander, I hope you'll check that out. We take a deep dive on health span and lifespan, and we discuss different strategies for living a longer, higher quality of life. So for a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering us 20% off their entire store. So if you're interested, this is a great opportunity to go get started with them. So just punch over to insidetracker.com/findingmastery to check out what they're doing for 20% off. And it's spelled just like it sounds, inside, INSIDE, tracker, TRACKER, insidetracker.com/findingmastery for 20% off. With that, let's jump right back into this conversation. Most people do not outperform their family socioeconomic status. Most. Doesn't mean all. Certainly you have.
I watched a lot of people around me growing up die, go to end up in prison later, addicted to drugs. Like I'm very aware of this.
Why do you think you were able to exponentially change the family legacy? Like,
there's a couple things. I think the fact that I was in survivor mode. So it wasn't just me and myself I was dealing with in the environment that I was the one that was responsible for helping take care and raise my sisters. And I didn't realize how much so until I left home. And I quit contacting home because I'd call and I'd have to give money and so on. So there's like a year and a half I didn't, and things just completely fell apart. My sisters ended up out on the streets. I honestly wasn't doing that well. I wasn't handling it. I was on a path towards, I was partying and drinking nonstop. And I ended up starting to take custody of my sisters. I did so before, well, my senior year. I didn't really have much classes anyway. I was just working on my senior project. I was working full time, but I bought a house, took custody of the oldest of my three, started working on getting custody of the second one. And, was it for them? Maybe it was also for me, but it put me back in this situation of I couldn't fail. I couldn't let the concerns or the problems or the depression or all those things affect, because I had to be there. I had to be present. I'm not suggesting that this is any sort of methodology that people should employ, but it comes down to like the burning the bridges mentality of like, putting yourself in a position where you have to succeed, right? And others are reliant on you as well. And so I think that is one thing. I think another is, the difference level of baseline resilience to be able to handle that kind of stress is different from person to person. And I'd love to say like, oh, it's something just innate about my approach to life and my philosophy that got me there. When I did really well in school, I did really well in athletics. Like I had a lot of things at my disposal that not everybody has in those situations. And like use my story just entirely as anybody can pull themselves up by their bootstraps analogy is, I don't think a fair approach, but I think that the lessons that I've learned over the scope of my life can certainly be used by anyone. But yeah, I'd put some context around that, right?
How do you translate all of the experiences, the trauma, the excitements, the volition, the commitment? How do you translate all of that into a gift to provide others? Like as a source of inspiration or as some sort of playbook or blueprint about steps people can take And I don't like the pull yourself up by the bootstrap, because we work in ecosystems, and it makes it sound like if you haven't had fulfillment or success or peace and happiness in your life, it's your fault. Not always. There is a
Not always.
part that,
No, life is not fair. And that's why I was very,
yeah,
very intentful earlier when I said my statement. I can't always, turn into those things, right? Or be able to recognize them, because there are your opportunity to have your workout. But life's not always fair. It doesn't always mean that that's going to be successful. And that's the reality of the world. Anybody that tells you otherwise is deluding themselves and trying to delude you. So how do you translate this?
what's the gift?
So this was a hard thing with my book, because I very purposely, it doesn't dive into the depths of horror stories that I could tell you, because it's not a book about, what me and what I've been through. I use my story as a framework to help people, guide them on this process of introspection, this ability to look inwards, be able to peel back those layers to truly understand the meaning for yourself, and hopefully in that provide some inspiration that you can move the needle. Not everybody's going to be able to take it this, how far you can take it, be a life or whatever, but it's not about like how successful you get. It's about, that process of moving that direction, and the liberating sensation it is to discover, if all I can control is my actions and responses and the work that I do, I can create success. Because whether I get the output of, a six-figure salary or some of the other, whatever these people define as success, like it doesn't matter. You can't control necessarily all those things in life, but you can control that. And so that's a liberating piece. But a lot of people, they're never even moving that direction, because they don't truly understand who they are and the way that they need to live life. This whole like goal setting and goal achievement thing, the bucket lists are shit, in my opinion. Sorry, I don't know if this is a clean podcast, but it comes down to that chasing your hair on fire stuff, like feeling like you're accomplishing things, because goals are an expression. They're a way to express the values and the way of being that you want to live. My 1,000-pound squat, my 1,000-pound deadlift, people today ask me, oh, what's your next big grand goal? It's got to be, what do you lifting next? I'm like, well, I'm working on changing the face of fitness all the way through its integration with clinical care. Well, yeah, but what about your next grand? I'm like, that is even bigger. Like, what do you mean? These are just different ways. If I wanted to be an NFL star, and had my knee taken out on some random Sunday, is my life over? You've worked in the sporting environment just as I have. And how many, people out of college or out of pro sports, when they hit their retirement, have trouble finding themselves, and they fall into drugs or depression, or just, it doesn't happen to everyone, but it's pretty common, because they're identifying themselves to that thing instead of understanding what it was about that, and how that was an expression, and how you can shift that into other areas.
How have you done this? Because there's no chance you haven't put in the hard yards here to understand, who am I, and how am I going to express that in my life? And oh, by the way, I'm in control of my actions, my responses, my effort, and I'm going to add one, my thoughts. And so I'm going to double down on those, right? But so what is your process to be better at introspection and to be better at becoming the person you want to be?
Yeah. Let me fast forward a little bit. So this is 2014. So at the time, I can't, I've been doing like business turnarounds for about 10 years at this point in time. I was working as an engineer, a manager, operations management professional before that, but it kind of moved and shifted into this. because I was very successful in that arena. I was a powerlifter, and I'd been ranked #1 in the world for, I think, 7 years straight at this point in time, in either the squat, the deadlift, or the total. I had a white picket fence around my house. I had a gym on the side where I was doing that training. I had 2 children. I had my hobbies in the shop, which is building engineer things. So building vehicles from the ground up, suspension design, steering design, all sorts of, chassis fabrication, just stuff, equipment for my gym, because I'm very particular. Things have to be a certain way if I'm going to achieve success that I want to. And that obviously makes sense for my businesses, right? And where that started coming from. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why do I feel so mind-numbingly unhappy? And also, I can't sustain this. My kids, they're young, but they're getting older, and they're going to be involved in sports and other stuff. And like, something has to give. Is it my hobbies? Is it my lifting? What is it? And so I'm like, what is it about my life that's making me unhappy? And so, in this reflection, I was like, well, maybe it's a career change. And I'm like, well, I think at this point, I know why I really like what I do. It's not, airplane parts or whatever it is that the company's making. It's the leadership aspect, the being able to inspire people to drive change. That's how I did business turnaround. It wasn't like some amazing reorganization strategy. And there's techniques and stuff to all that, but it really comes down to driving change in an individual, getting them to leap into the unknown, and realize they could, and then overcome that, and building this engagement in their work and their life and so on. And you start changing people, it changes culture, changes companies. Anyway, so I'm like, it's not the technical nature of it, it's the coaching part, that piece of it, the helping people accomplish more than that they think is possible. I'm like, this is something that I deeply value. Like, why do I do the other things? Like, well, the lifting, the other, I challenge. That's why, the sense of accomplishment, whatever you want to call that, being able to, push myself in that manner, that's another value of mine. Anyway, I started diving deeper, and I realized that like sense of family and community are big. And I was missing that in my home life. And I was also missing like a creative outlet. That's why I had my hobbies and my other pieces. And so I started looking at everything as a whole in this process. And it's really just, you could think about the 5 whys. You could think about, which is a great tool, is to just take those physical things that you want in life and just keep, spend a month asking yourself, why do you want that? And once you get there, then ask yourself why you want that again. And you're going to end up getting to words like what I'm using here, right? Continual learning, creativity, that these are just my personal values. One of the things that I do, and we kind of see it in this approach here, and it's very unique, is that I've found that I can find some of my values by trying to chase achieving balance, not through moderation, but through chasing the extremes. You find these things that you appear diametrically opposed, that you truly know and feel like, hey, I want the absolute perfect form in a squat. I'll go back to the squat again, right? But I want to put every last thing into it. And people go, well, they're not the same. If you want it absolutely perfect, you train with a body weight or just a plate, or if you want everything into it, forms to the wind. And I'm like, no, you're going to chase, you have to have, and you find this beautiful thing in the center, which I did. But try that with life, which work-life balance. One's a compromise for the other, right? We could go into a lot of different approaches to this, but like taking these things and chasing what you do know forces you to start cutting out the fluff. So the fluff for me was my job. So I'm like, I'm highly successful in this career. I'm going to walk away from it. I am going to, one of the things is, in this piece of wanting people to achieve more than they thought possible, is I've developed a technical skill set an ability on the physical nature to get people out of pain and live a better quality of life. I've been doing clinical education on the side for like 6 years or so at this point too, and writing and doing videos. And I changed people's lives. Like, and I'm like, I have to do something with this. This is going to be the path that I'm going to go down, and I'm going to create a culture and an environment that draws like this sense of family, the community, create that, within that. So as I'm making these shifts, it started, I cut a lot out of my life. I cut out some old friendships that were non-productive or counterproductive, because they were not healthy. They didn't enhance my life and were detrimental. I said, I walked away from my career. I quit competing, even though I was number one in the world. I said, I'm going to chase, and I didn't tell anybody at the time, I said, I'm going to chase 1,000-pound deadlift. My goal was to chase it for reps, and then to later chase the squat and do it for reps, which it was pointless of saying. I'd have been called crazy at the time, but to demonstrate and walk the walk of the principles that I teach, the ability to control and manage spinal mechanics, the ability to control the foot and ankle complex and understand how these are the number one and number two priorities as they impact the body as a whole. Anyway, because one, that allowed me more creative expression in what I was doing. It allowed me to inspire people. It allowed me to do some of the things that I couldn't do in this framed construct of, here's a meet in Australia at this time under here, this set of rules and so on. I'm like, I don't care anymore. I'm doing this for me, right? So I walked away from these big things. I walked away from my marriage, because it was a nice, comfortable, it always been a nice, comfortable partnership, friendship. But I wanted to have passion. Passion is like being able to have passion about everything that I had in my life. So I thought I was just going to be a single father. But lo and behold, when you put like who you are out in the world and just become a magnet to draw like those same values and stuff to you, an amazing woman ended up finding me. And at 40 years old, I discovered love for the first time in my life, that, oh, that shit in books and movies is actually real. Like we can have and create like a shared vision for our future and life together. Like, anyway, I'm getting on side topics, but I started creating all the things in my life. I'm creating products. My training is mixed in with my work, and now I'm creating more time for my family. Even though I'm working harder than I've ever worked before, I'm creating the time that I wanted to have to be able to do those things and be there for my family. And
okay, so
I mean, we're talking hours a day more.
I totally get the mad scientist of strength right now. I completely, because literally you're like a hedgehog. You can go deep, in the mechanics of foot, ankle, that complex, all the way across electrical engineering. So I totally get the mad scientist bit. And I'm marveled that I haven't heard you talk about like a mentor, somebody that guided you. So I'm thinking that somehow through this process of introspection, I'm imagining it's either meditation, prayer, or journaling. I don't know. I would like to know more, that you have gotten to some truths. And then you said, now I need to listen and follow my path according to those truths. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but is that close?
Yeah. So my father actually spent, I think, 3 years in the monasteries in Tibet.
Wait, biological or
My
stepfather?
biological father. I'd only see him like once a year for a couple of weeks. But he sent me in, I spent time with him, visiting and spending time with people on the spiritual side of stuff. And that's why I said I always have this mix of the Eastern and Western like approaches. And so that was something very early on, is like learning the ability to kind of meditate, be with myself. But outside of that, no, I did not have mentors. I didn't have access. People like, who'd you look up to? I'm like, I didn't have a TV. I didn't have, but I had the library. We read like crazy, and I was reading deep stuff at a very early age. So Ernest Hemingway, Jack London, Kurt Vonnegut, like a lot of mixture, a lot of kind of stuff on the sci-fi too, not Kurt Vonnegut, but Ray Bradbury, things of that. But it was a lot of just like being able to be in another world and envision yourself there. And I think that helped me with being able to create and envision like what I want to do in life, because I try to view it as my ability, and this is the lasting thing that I want to do for my children, is show them. I don't care what it is or who they want to be, but they can create and form the world around them, and to empower them to believe and know that that's a real thing. But I think I was forced to have a lot of time with myself growing up, right? And I don't have a lot of mentors. I have one that works for me now. He was my high school wrestling coach. And in the course of filming this documentary, we ended up doing an interview, and our CEO really loved him and brought him in and hired him. But it's going to be called Grand Goals. So hoping that it comes out in the next 3 months. We're trying to find a larger studio house to pick it up. We can get it on Netflix right now, but getting a bigger backing. There's a trailer for anybody who wants to view it on my site, chrisduffin.com. So go there, fill out the email list, and you'll get notified when it comes out. You'll see via the trailer. It's going to be a pretty solid piece. So it's follows me along in the journey towards the squat, but it's telling the backstory of like why I've done the things I've done and how actually being this way affects everybody's life that revolves around it, and what that has brought. So really interesting piece.
Do you work from structure?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like you don't have routines at all.
No.
Right? Yeah.
No.
So then, but you plan.
I can't say that I'm not suggesting that. That's just how I operate. Yeah.
That's definitely your model. And then do you write down your training programs, or do you write down quarterly goals, or objectives that you're trying to line up the noses in your business toward? Or like, do you write stuff down?
Yes. So I've got notebooks all over the place. I've got notes all over my phone. I'm constantly, because I'll wake up, a lot of my stuff comes to me in a dream state. So I have to wake up and I'll jot out, this is where my product ideas come from, business, things like that is in that state. And so I've got one beside my bed. So that's important for me and something I'm always on. And it takes me a long time to pull this together. Like, I talked about business process stuff, like doing turnarounds. There was like some very laid out stuff, and I was able to, in later years, figure out how to pencil out that structure of what that looks like for both the goal setting and execution cycle, being able to generate your North Star, being able off there to start creating, the major objectives, and then starting to break down all that. But normally I train people in the process. I'm not very good at doing it because I have all this in my head all the time. Like I said, engineering's my background. Engineers don't understand me at all, because I'll walk out and I can just start welding and bending, and next thing you know, there's a very complex product or an entire vehicle, right? And they're like, where's your prints? And I'm like, well, it's here, and I can't get it out until I go do it. But I have found that, to be successful in the business side of things, and for most people, having a structured system for doing that, and it's an annual planning cycle. It's that I believe in, and really, it's this. Here's the big thing: if you want to execute, it is this shifting in mindset from, do I have the right plan, to how well am I working a plan, and then becoming an investigative scientist, diving into how am I, what are the breakdowns, what are the gaps in this process, because it doesn't have, everybody wants to go back, well, the plan's not working, let's create the most brilliant master plan. They keep getting to the goal setting piece, instead of like, how are we actually freaking performing on this? And so there's an entire process on that. I've got some tools I built that are laid out I think they come out on email if you sign up on my chrisduffin.com, by the way. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty damn horrible at sitting down and doing that stuff myself. But I do have very specific goals and targets either in my head or written down all over the place. And my training plans early on, I can still lean on the engineering side of being very process driven, building out the structure of what happens in periodization and all this sorts of stuff and all these grand spreadsheets, penciling all this out. But our coaching team does that, and they've actually managed my training for the last 6 years, and they managed it all the way through. So I'm providing the insight on overall scope, how we address this, and then they build out the curriculum
Okay, so
and content on that.
What is your business? What is the core business that you're working?
It's a very unique business in the fact that we're a coaching and education company whose philosophy around movement and loading drives the tools that we create in the market. So most people are aware of us because of the tools that we create, which are new and innovative, that improve biomechanics, reduce the ability to potentiate injuries. They're taking away the stresses that we don't adapt to, allowing for the variability in different people's different levers, mobility restrictions, training needs. So our tools are used in like 29 of 30 Major League Baseball teams, 90% of the NBA, 90% of the NFL, 600 plus colleges, every big name school. The Rock has like 8 of our different bars, like all over the place, as well as the rest of like Marvel Studios, a lot of the action figures. So we do coaching and education as well. So we have a series of we do seminars and certifications, and we coach clients around the world. And it's the same thing, how do we build resilience? How do we get stronger? And how do we do so while at the same time allowing the body to move better, feel better, eliminate or, remove injuries? And then our tools complement that. And we have a different lens that we look at the world instead of just going, hey, what's a product that we can make and sell versus what's the gaps out there based on this lens that we look at things.
What's the best link to be able to see more about what you just described?
Yeah. So the easiest, so Kabuki strength is really prevalent, but if you go to my personal website, chrisduffin.com, you'll get the first part of this book absolutely free. You sign up for the email, or that's going to be emailed to you, as well as exclusive discounts to Kabuki strength, as well as Barefoot Athletics, which is a company I co-founded on minimalist shoe wear. And so they're absolute best in minimalist shoe wear. You'll see it when you'll know it when you see it. And Build Fast Formula, which is the supplementation that ties to my personal nutritional strategies. So you'll get exclusive discounts to all those, as well as some exclusive educational content. So it's nice single point of entry. You want to know how to follow on social media, the links are there. If you don't, type in my name, Chris Duffin, like muffin, but with a D. You'll see me pop up my face. There'll be a little blue checky thing. Well, that's where you find me. It's not complicated. People love listing all that stuff out. So,
dude, you're a legend. And so really quickly before you go, just super reductionist approach to a couple questions here. Okay.
Yeah.
It all comes down to.
But for me, the motto I've been using recently is create shit, do shit, live beyond the limits. If I do another book, that's probably going to be the title.
Awesome. And then last one, success is?
Success for me is being able to create alignment in my life to live the values and be able to express those in the best possible. And so for me, that life is about connection with other people. It's about enhancing that and building it, which is why we're sitting here. I've got tons of products to sell you, and I linked you at the end, but I'm trying to share this stuff. And unless you're like a J.K. Rowling's or a other person, you don't write a book to to make money these days. So,
No, you
um,
don't. Yeah. Hey, man.
so
So I like what it's too flat to say inspiring. It's too flat to say that about your life arc. However, I don't know a better word because my experience of listening to you is um, one. There's no pity, but there is a sadness for your childhood, and there is an incredible breath of like, wow, like inspiration means to breathe life into. So this inhale that I have, which is like, it's incredible. Your scars and the way that you've worked through them, you are the epitome for post-traumatic growth. And I'm stoked to hear your story, to learn from you, to know you in this way. And I'm excited to share your insights with our community. So Chris, thank you. And if I can be of any service in any way, please let me know.
I really appreciate this interview. You really hit some hard hitting questions, and it was not it allowed me to kind of dig and share in some different ways. So thank you.
All right, man.